Hello, right in time for Switch Focus, your most trusted bulletin for international news. Making my debut, my name is Saza Munga, and my sign language interpreter is Teresia Shira. Welcome. Evacuation flights from Afghanistan have resumed a day after the Taliban's military takeover raised panic in Kabul, and thousands mobbed the city's international airport in a desperate attempt to flee. The Kabul airport's tarmac and runway, which troops from the United States control, are now clear of crowds, with military flights evacuating diplomats and civilians from Afghanistan taking off, as Lincoln Wambugu reports.
Military flights transporting diplomats and civilians out of Afghanistan started taking off this morning. Many thronged the runway, running alongside a moving military transporter aircraft as it prepared for takeoff. Some clung to the side of the plane, and at least 2 of them are reported to have perished when they fell from the aircraft after it had left the ground. American troops killed 2 armed Afghans who were part of the crowd that breached the airport perimeter. 7 people reportedly died in total. European Union's Economy Commissioner now says that Europe has to create humanitarian corridors to receive refugees fleeing from Afghanistan and also to avoid uncontrolled flows of illegal immigrants. Meanwhile, China said it was ready for friendly relations with the Taliban, while Russia and Iran also made diplomatic overtures. George W. Bush, the former U.S. president, has also called on his country to expedite the evacuation of Afghans who helped Washington's war effort. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken held separate discussions on Monday with his counterparts in the United Kingdom, the European Union, Turkey and NATO on the situation in Afghanistan and Washington's efforts to bring back their citizens. Reports say that senior Taliban leader Amir Khan Muttaqi is in the Afghan capital negotiating with Kabul's political leadership, including former President Hamid Karzai and Abdullahi Abdullah, who once headed the country's negotiating council. The Taliban have meanwhile declared the war in Afghanistan over, and a senior leader said the group would wait until foreign forces had left before creating a new governance structure. Lincoln Ombogo, Switch TV News.
Now, in other news, President Joe Biden has said he stands squarely behind the U.S. exit from Afghanistan as he faces withering criticism over the Taliban's lighting conquest of the war-torn country. On Sunday, the Taliban declared victory after Afghan President Ashraf Ghani fled and his government collapsed. The militants' return to the rule begins an end to almost 20 years as U.S.-led coalitions presence in the country. Robert Omer reports.
President Biden's address followed a dramatic day at Kabul International Airport, where hundreds of civilians desperate to flee the country forced their way inside yesterday. Biden returned on Monday to White House from Camp David presidential retreat to make his first public remark on Afghanistan in nearly a week. Mr. Biden is facing an intense political backlash over the turmoil in Kabul following his April decision to order all American troops out of Afghanistan by 11 September, the 20-year anniversary of the terror attacks that triggered U.S. invasion. In his speech, Mr. Biden said that U.S. mission in Afghanistan was never supposed to have been about the nation bidding. He said that when he was the vice president, he had opposed the 2009 deployment of thousands of more troops into the country by the former President Barack Obama. Opinion polls suggest that most Americans support the U.S. existing in Afghanistan, but Mr. Biden is facing a barrage of criticism over the manner of the departure after he withdrew U.S. troops, then sent thousands back in to help in evacuation. Kabul was the last major city in Afghanistan to fall to a Taliban offensive that began months ago but accelerated in recent days as they gained control over terrorists, shocking many observers. Robert Omer, Switch TV News.
Now, blood and treasure is a term that's been used to describe the toll of warfare for the United States. The conflict in Afghanistan has cost a lot of both, but it is not only the country that has paid the price. From October 2001 to April 2021, a total of 2,448 U.S. troops lost their lives and an additional 1,144 Allied soldiers were killed in the U.S. longest war. According to data compiled by the Brown University's Cost of War project, a total of 444 aid workers lost their lives in Afghanistan, along with 72 journalists, All those numbers pale before the cost of the war for the Afghan people. As many as 69,000 Afghan troops, police, and 47,245 civilians gave their lives over the 20 years of war, according to the tracking by Brown University. The toll among the Taliban and other opposition fighters is estimated at 51,191, according to Brown University. In the monetary terms, the war cost the United States a total of $2,261 trillion by April this year. Now, the UN Security Council has called for an immediate cessation of all hostilities in Afghanistan and the establishment of a new government that is united, inclusive, and representative, including with the full, equal, and meaningful participation of women, institutional continuity, and adherence of Afghanistan's international obligations, as well as ensuring the safety and security of all Afghan and international citizens. Scott Muriuki narrates.
The council members called for an immediate end to the violence in Afghanistan, restoration of security, civil and constitutional order, and urgent talks to resolve the current crisis of authority in the country, and to reach a peaceful settlement through the Afghan-led and Afghan-owned process of national reconciliation. They underscore that a sustainable end to the conflict in Afghanistan can only be achieved through an inclusive, just, durable, and realistic political settlement that upholds human rights, including for women, children, and minorities. They called on parties to adhere to international norms and standards on human rights and put an end to all abuses and violations in this regard. They underlined that all parties must respect their obligations under international humanitarian law in all circumstances, including those related to the protection of civilians, while underscoring the particular situation of vulnerability of humanitarian and medical personnel, interpreters, and other international service providers. The Security Council members called on strengthened efforts to provide humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan and on all parties to allow immediate, safe, and unhindered humanitarian access for UN humanitarian agencies and other humanitarian actors, providing assistance, including those in conflict lines, to ensure that humanitarian assistance reaches all those in need. They retaliated their support for the work of the UN Assistant Mission in Afghanistan and emphasized the importance of the safety and security of UN personnel, as well as diplomatic and consular personnel of UN member states.
DR Congo President Felix Tshisekedi has authorized U.S. Special Forces to help the Congolese army battle the Allied Democratic Forces, an armed group linked to ISIL. The ADF, which the United States has deemed a terrorist group, is considered the deadliest of the dozens of armed militias that roam the mineral-rich Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Brian Mwenda narrates.
The Catholic Church in the country says that ADF has killed more than 6,000 civilians since 2013, while a respected US-based monitor, the Kivu Security Tracker, blames it for more than 1,200 deaths in the Beni area alone since 2017. US Ambassador Mike Hammer, who presented the team to President Sheki, said the presence was part of the partnership agreement between the two countries in 2019, according to the president's statement. In March, the US State Department said the ADF is notorious across the region for its brutal violence against Congolese citizens and the regional military forces. The US has sanctioned alleged leader Seka Musa Baluku and said ISIL has acknowledged the ADF as an affiliate since 2019. Congolese authorities' crackdown against ADF included a state of siege in which members of the security forces have replaced top officials in northern Kivu and neighboring Ituri province. The US has designated the ADF as a terrorist group affiliated with Islamic State. United Nations experts have expressed doubts over the alleged links. Brian Mwenda, Switch TV.
Zambian President-elect Hakainde Hichilema has slammed the Southern African country's outgoing brutal regime while promising a better democracy in his debut address to the nation hours after winning the top job in a landslide. Speaking shortly after his predecessor Edgar Lungu conceded defeat, the president tycoon and veteran opposition leader said his camp had been victims of brutal regime that is exiting, as Lincoln Mambugu narrates.
After a campaign dominated by the country's economic woes and marred by sporadic violence, Hichilema garnered 2.8 million votes against 1.8 million for the incumbent Edgar Lungu, according to nearly final results.
Lungu's
The
main
Electoral
rival,
Commission
Hakainde
proclaimed
Hichilema, cast his vote in the
president-elect the early
afternoon.
hours of Monday.
The
bringing
United
the
Party
country
for
down on
National
Lungu's
Development
nearly
candidate
six-year
is
reign.
taking his sixth
Hichilema,
shot at the
59,
presidency.
pledged, and I
He
quote,
told reporters
"We
he
will
was
foster
confident.
Now, and with that story, we take a short commercial break. We have a lot lined up for you. We'll be back after the break. Back to the broadcast. My name is Saza Munga. Our sign language interpreter is Teresia Washira. Now, moving forward, Tunisia held its second COVID-19 vaccination open day on Sunday, targeting young people with high risk of infection as the North African country looks to quell vaccination hesitancy. Targeting people aged 18 to 39, the activity was organized by the Tunisian presidency, the Military Medical Directorate and the Health Ministry. Over 500,000 people were vaccinated during the first open day held on August 8th, and one of the 401 walk-in vaccination centers in the country set up in the Pioneer School of Ariana in the suburbs of the capital city, Tunis. The vaccination operation was smooth sailing and well organized according to the health department and the scientific committee in Tunisia. Many young adults are forcing COVID-19 vaccines, and vaccine hesitancy is one of the main challenges facing health authorities in the North African state.
I am a teacher. I'm 28 and I'll turn 29 very soon. I think all young people should get vaccinated because the whole Tunisian population will get infected as well as the whole world. It's very important to get doses of the jab. Youths are reluctant to come because they think they're immune against the virus.
This open vaccination day is for the active population. They are at a high risk of getting COVID-19. I hope more and more people will come for vaccination, as vaccination is the only solution to ending the epidemic.
Je suis enseignante, j'ai 28 ans, je vais bientôt faire 29 ans.
I am very happy with the organization and everything is going in an orderly manner. I hope that Tunisia is safe from COVID-19 and that the people of Tunisia would come for vaccination.
Now, Ivory Coast is set to roll out vaccinations against Ebola after the country recorded its first known case of the disease since 1994. Health workers, close relatives and contacts of the victim will be vaccinated using 5,000 doses sent from Guinea.
According to the authorities, the case was recorded in Abidjan, which is Ivory Coast's economic hub, in an 18-year-old Guinean woman who had arrived in the country on Wednesday after traveling by road from Labe in Guinea. The World Health Organization said that genetic sequencing of a virus sample will determine whether the case was linked to a recent flare-up of Ebola in neighboring Guinea. It is transmitted through close contact with bodily fluids, and people who live with or care for patients are at most risk. The death rate varies from 25 to 90% according to past outbreaks, although the chance of survival rises significantly if the disease is spotted at an early stage. Combating Ebola outbreaks mainly involves the time-honored technique of tracing and isolating people who have been in contact with patients. This has recently been joined by a vaccine that was extensively deployed against an epidemic that ran in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo from August 2018 to June 2020, claiming more than 2,200 lives. The discovery in Ivory Coast comes nearly 2 months after the World Health Organization declared an end to Guinea's second outbreak of Ebola, which started last year, killing 12 people. For Switch TV, I'm Lillian Minor.
Rescue workers are rushing to locate survivors of the deadly earthquake that struck Haiti on Saturday as a tropical storm hit the Caribbean nation. At least 1,419 people are known to have died in the 7.2 magnitude quake. More than 6,900 were injured, and an unknown number are still missing.
Tropical depression Grace is expected to dump up to 25 centimeters of rainfall over the worst affected area. It is feared that the deluge will trigger landslides. Roads already made impossible by the quake could be further damaged by the rains, so the aid teams are racing to get essential services provided to the quake-hit region. On Twitter, Haiti's Civil Protection Agency urged good neighbors whose space has not been affected to help shelters for the displaced people. Search and rescue teams have been arriving from the United States and Chile, with more on the way from Mexico. Cuban medical teams are already in Haiti and helping people. Humanitarian organizations say survivors need drinking water and shelter. More than 30,000 families have been reportedly been left homeless. Homes, churches and schools were amongst buildings flooded in the quake,
Some hospitals were left overwhelmed and in need of supplies as they struggle to get treatment for the injured. The southwest of Haiti appears to have suffered the worst of the damage, especially around the city of Les Cayes. The earthquake compound problem facing the impoverished nation, which is already reeling from a political crisis following the assassination of its president last month. Prime Minister Ariel Henry declared a month-long state of emergency and urged the population to show solidarity. A 2010 earthquake in Haiti killed more than 200,000 people and caused extensive damage to the country's infrastructure and economy. Brian Mwenda, Switch TV.
The U.S. administration has declared water shortage for Lake Mead, its largest reservoir by volume, and restricted water use relating purposes of agriculture and landscape. The U.S. Bureau of Reclamation announced first-tier water shortage for the reservoir, which was formed by the construction of the Hoover Dam and Colorado River. From January 1, 2022, the U.S. federal government will restrict water use of certain purposes relating agriculture and landscape. Recently, the volume of Lake Mead, which lies on the border of the state of Nevada and Arizona, has declined about 35% of its largest capacity. The lake's water level has fallen to about 325 meters, the lowest level since it was filed in the 1930s. As of last Thursday, data from the U.S. government shows that more than 95% of the population in western U.S. were mired in drought, which has been the worst situation ever. Now, after a devastating fuel tanker explosion in the northern village of Tietle killed 33 people and left nearly 80 wounded, Lebanese hospitals across the country have now opened their doors to patients. The northern village and the rest of Akkar province is one of the country's poorest, and because its hospitals do not have burnt units, many of the wounded had to be treated as far away as the capital Beirut, about a 2.5-hour drive, as Robert Omer narrates.
Gitai Hospital, a few blocks away from Beirut port, was destroyed in a gruesome port explosion on August 4, 2020. It is operating again, but like other hospitals in the country, it struggles to find medicine and fuel to keep its staff. Lebanon's hospitals have been struggling for nearly 2 years to secure medicine and retain staff as Lebanese pound lost more than 90% of its value to the US dollar. Charities and individuals have donated money and supplies to the hospital. The explosion in Akkar on Saturday further stretched the health sector already thin resources and the country's capacity to treat burn patients plummeted. The health ministry reached out to other countries for help. Turkey transported 4 wounded people to Ankara for treatment, while the ministry also spoke with Kuwait and Jordan authorities to evacuate patients and deliver medical assistance. Elsewhere in Beirut, the cash-strapped government-run Rafiki Hariri University hospitals struggles to find enough fuel to keep the lights and machines working. In spite of that, the explosion in Akkar meant that they had to expedite plans to open 4-bed burnt unit with the International Committee of the Red Cross. Lebanon has struggled with severe fuel shortages for months, both to top up vehicles and to power electricity generators. The central bank announced last week that it would stop spending roughly $3 billion annually on fuel subsidies. The announcement sending tremors through the economy and encouraging distributors to hold their stock, waiting to see if they can sell them at higher rates later. Robert Thomas, Switch TV News.
Now, Japan's government plans to expand the COVID-19 state of emergency to 7 more prefectures from Friday to September 12th and extend the duration of the state of emergency taking place in Tokyo and 4 other prefectures in line that of 7 new prefectures under the state of emergency. Establishments serving alcohol or offering karaoke are asked to suspend their businesses during the period, while those of serving liquor are requested to close at 8 p.m. local time, as Mariam Jahid reports.
quasi-emergency measures under which governors could determine serving hours for alcohol at establishments taking antivirus steps after considering infection trends will be expanded to 16 prefectures from Friday to September 12. A government task force plan will formally endorse the decision after the government COVID-19 advisory panel approves the plan on Tuesday. A total of 14,854 daily COVID-19 infections have been reported nationwide in the past 24 hours, rising about 2,700 from a week earlier. Of the total, Tokyo contributed 2,962 cases, Kanagawa confirmed 2,584, Chiba reported 1,609, and Saitama logged 1,301. In addition, according to the tally, the daily COVID-19 infections in Chiba and Kanagawa prefectures, as well as those in Toyama and Saga prefectures, hit record high. Yesterday, Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga said Japan has secured enough antibody cocktails to prevent COVID-19 patients from developing severe symptoms as he visited a Tokyo hotel that conducts the treatment amid an increasing strain on hospitals. Mariam Mujahid, Switch TV.
New Zealand has announced a snap lockdown after a man tested positive for COVID, the first case in 6 months. The case was detected in Auckland, which will be in lockdown for a week, while the rest of the country will be in lockdown for 3 days. Authorities say they are working on the assumption that the new case was the Delta variant. Around 20% of its population has been fully vaccinated, as Coates Muriuki report.
Coromandel, a coastal town where the infected person had visited, will be in lockdown for 7 days too. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said the toughest level 4 rules were required, closing schools, offices and all businesses, with only essential services remaining operational. There was reportedly a rush at supermarkets in Auckland as locals anticipated a snap lockdown. Officials said there was a need for strong response because of the fear of the Delta variant and because there was no clear link between the new case and the border or quarantine facilities. Data released by New Zealand's Ministry of Health show that all COVID-19 cases detected in the country's border in recent weeks had been the Delta variant. New Zealand has been successful in eliminating the virus from within its borders, although its international borders remain largely closed. However, its vaccination program has rolled out at a slow pace, with only around 20% of people fully vaccinated and 33% of people having received 1 dose, according to a World in data.
Now we have come to the end of our bulletin. Remember to follow up on our stories making headlines in a subsequent bulletin at 7 p.m. Our sign language interpreter is Teresia Washira. My name has been Saza Munga. My producer has been Lillian Minor. Have a lovely evening.